Today, I'm going to show you how to make a fantasy fairy garden in a jar with the supplies provided to you by Rodman Public Library. What is a fairy garden, you might ask? A fairy garden is a miniature garden filled with things from nature. Fairy gardens can be small enough to fit in a bottle, like the one we're going to make today. It can also be big enough to completely take over your backyard. The possibilities are endless. They can be made with anything you can find outside. One thing that fairy gardens of both types have in common is that they both have a combination of miniaturized furniture, buildings, and figures. Included in your kit is one miniature door and a small figurine. So let's get started. First, you're going to gather your materials. I have some glue, both regular and hot glue. I have some moss. I have my door. And I have a fantasy-themed character. Right now, we're going to use our Han Solo figure to put in. You'll also need rocks and a jar, all of which will be supplied to you from Rodman Library. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your moss and you're going to kind of cut it in an oval. You're going to make it about as tall as what your jar is. This one seems to be pretty close already, so I'm just going to kind of round the edges. You can see I've cut it into an oval shape. The next step is to take some of your remaining moss and your rocks and place them in the bottom of your jar. I'm not left with too much moss with the piece that I used, but it'll be enough. So first, I'm going to put the rocks in the jar. I'm going to put a few in there, maybe a little bit of moss now. A couple more rocks, just to kind of fill it up. You're going to want to make sure that you leave enough room in your jar so that your figure and your door can stand up. You don't have to just use what's supplied. You can also grab some rocks from outside just to fill up your jar and make it look neat. So if you have a cool rock laying around, go ahead and throw it in the jar. So after we place our rocks and our moss, the next step is to take your piece of moss that you cut into an oval and we're going to glue it to one of the sides of the jar. I'm going to do that with some hot glue, but you can do it with either regular glue or hot glue. Whatever you have around the house will work. Hot glue just dries a little faster. Try and get a good amount of glue on there. And then I'm going to press it down to the side of my jar. Make sure you press it nice and tight. If you're using Elmer's, you might want to hold it for a minute or two just to make sure that it's in there. You can see how I placed that, and we can see my rocks at the bottom of the jar. From here, the next step is going to be to glue your door onto your project. So I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue on the back and a little bit on the bottom just so it stays nice. Then you're going to want to make sure you press it nice and firm against your moss that you glued in the last step. I think I've got that glued down pretty well. Your final step is to take your figure and put a little glue on them just so they stay put. And you can place them anywhere in the jar you choose. I'll put mine right on the doorstep. And it fits right there on the door. The last step is just to seal your project. So we're going to close it up. And you have your fantasy fairy garden in a jar. Feel free to add your own embellishments. I encourage you to go outside and find something unique to put in your fantasy garden. That's it. I hope you enjoyed making a fantasy garden with materials provided to you by Rodman Public Library. Have a great day.